Much like prison, where cigarettes are a form of currency, Charter Hill's behavioral health circa 1994 had its own form of currency. And it was these individually wrapped butterscotch candies. These things were literally and figuratively gold. And the keepers of this currency were the nurses. So they would dole them out based on what they would consider good behavior. So taking our meds, following directions, basically not exhibiting any of the behaviors that got us stuck in Charter Hills in the first place. So for me, as long as I wasn't acting too eating disordery, I would be rewarded with one of these candies. Now, Charter Hills was split into two separate sections. The addicts were on one side, and all of the rest of us were on the other side. It was a real mental health melting pot. And during the day, the addicts got to play kickball, and the rest of us were crammed into a tiny room off the gym in a room they used for art therapy. Our art therapist, Karen, would pass out blank white pieces of paper to us all at the table. I say blank, and one side was blank, and then the other side contained various case notes from other patients in the hospital. So, just think of it as highly unethical and probably illegal scratch paper. She would then dump out a big box of markers on the table, and she'd say the same thing every time. She'd say, "I want you to draw the futures you imagine for yourself when you're well," which sounds lovely, right? Except for none of the colored markers worked. They had all long since run dry. The only markers that worked were the brown, the gray, the black, and the tan, And honestly, it didn't really matter what future I imagined for myself. In that room, the only thing that mattered was what Karen wanted us to draw. And Karen wanted us to draw something cheery. Have you ever tried to draw a cheery picture with brown and gray and black and tan? Because it is tricky, but I did it. And I was rewarded with a terse nod of approval and a butterscotch candy, right? I'm sitting there with that butterscotch in my hand. I'm like, woo, I have got this system figured out. I knew exactly what I was there to do. My job was to get as many of those butterscotch candies as I could because butterscotch meant that I was being good. And being good meant that I was getting out. So that is what I did. And I was pretty good at it too. I had a pretty enviable collection. A collection I had to hide, though, from my roommate, Margaret. Now, Margaret was an 82-year-old woman. I have no idea why she was in Charter Hills in the first place, but that lady could not stop with the butterscotch candy. And when she had one in her mouth, she was already furiously unwrapping the next. It was a never-ending cycle. And when the nurses would come into a room at night to do bed checks, they'd always find Margaret in bed with a butterscotch, and they'd say, "Margaret, you can't be in bed with a butterscotch, you'll choke." But every night, it was the same. So finally, they made it one nurse's job to come into our room at night, remove Margaret's butterscotch candies, and this made Margaret miserable. And it also made her miserable to be around because she couldn't stop talking about it. And one night, I had had all I could take, and I thought about my collection under my bed. Yes, I thought, if I give her one candy, right, she'll be quiet long enough for me to fall asleep. So I did. She unwraps the candy, she pops it in her mouth. Silence. I am just about to fall asleep when I hear a sound that truly can only be the sound of hard candy being sucked violently into a windpipe. I open my eyes, and it is like a scene from a movie. Margaret's got her hands wrapped around her neck, her eyes are bulging. I leap from my bed. I run to the nurse's station, yelling, "Margaret's choking on a butterscotch candy." All the nurses turn to scowl at the poor woman whose job it is to remove the candy, like, "Nice going, Wendy." And we all take off running for the room. Now, I have no memory of how they actually removed the candy from Margaret, but I do remember exactly the way that candy looked as it left her, sailed across the room, hit the wall, and fell to the hospital room floor. Margaret sat up, gasping for breath, and Wendy, seeking vindication, turns to Margaret and asks, "Hey, Margaret, where'd you get that butterscotch candy?" And I know that the jig is up, right? I have to be honest that I'm the one that gave her the candy, and when I am, they're going to take away my collection. And with that, they're gonna take away any proof that I had that I was being good, and any hope I had that I was getting out of this place anytime soon. And that is exactly what happened. I really nailed that. So later that night, I'm trying to just settle down, and all I can think about is Margaret and what it looked like for her to fight for her life and to fight to not fade away. And it's not lost on me in that moment that I had been trying to do exactly the opposite. I had been trying and fighting to fade into nothing. And I didn't want to do that anymore. So the next day, in art therapy, I'm sketching out my imagined future in sepia tones. And as I'm drawing, I'm thinking about what it means to be well instead of what it means to be good. And as I'm drawing, I realize I'm taking up all of the space on the paper. And I close my eyes and I let myself feel what it feels like to take up space in the chair and to take up space in the room. And for the first time, I like the way that feels. The night before, Margaret almost lost her life. But at the same time, somehow, I got a piece of mine back. Thank you.